Okay, so picture this. You're head over heels for a girl, you're pouring your heart out, making plans, the whole 9 yards. Then, he swoops in. The smooth-talking, charismatic guy. And not only does he steal her heart, he has the audacity to try and make you look like the bad guy in the process. Well, buckle up, because this is the story of how I turned the tables and exposed the truth about him, all with the help of one epic family dinner. And trust me, it was glorious. If you've ever felt like you've been wronged, and I know you have, hit that like button and subscribe because you're not going to want to miss this. It started like any other heartbreak. Her name was Sarah, and for 6 months, we were practically inseparable. We had the same weird sense of humor, loved the same obscure indie bands, and could spend hours just talking about life. I remember the first time we met, at a dingy record store tucked away on Bleecker Street. I was browsing through the used vinyl, fingers tracing the grooves of a worn copy of Low by David Bowie, when I heard this laugh. It was a light, airy sound, like wind chimes, and it drew me in. I turned around to see her, leaning against a shelf, eyes sparkling with amusement. She was holding a copy of a rare Velvet Underground album, and she was pointing at the cover with a grin. That's when I knew. We spent the next hour talking about music, about everything, really, and it felt like we'd known each other our whole lives. We'd spend our weekends exploring the city, from hidden speakeasies in the Village to the rooftop bars in Brooklyn. Every corner was a new adventure. She loved the way I'd always choose a different path home from the subway just to see a new view. I loved how she could find a hidden park, a perfect cafe, or a street art mural wherever we went. Her hand always seemed to find mine as we walked, her laughter a constant soundtrack to our days. I remember a particular night, we were sitting on the stoop of her apartment building, sharing a bottle of cheap wine, watching the city lights twinkle. I'd reached over and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She looked up at me, her eyes reflecting the city glow, and for a moment, the world stopped. I swear I could feel the electricity between us, the silent understanding that we were something special. Then, boom. Enter, David. Mr. Perfect. Shiny car, slick hair, and the kind of charm that could make a nun question her vows. I remember the first time I saw him. He was at the cafe where Sarah and I had our first date, the one we always went back to. He was talking to her, leaning in close, his voice a low, melodious hum. I could see her laughing, her eyes lit up. A knot of dread formed in my stomach. I wanted to march right over, to claim my territory, but something held me back. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew, in that instant, that things were about to change. Sarah started pulling away. Dates were cancelled, texts became sparse, and the air between us felt thick with unspoken things. I tried to talk to her. I asked her what was going on. Every conversation was a battlefield of my own anxiety and her careful avoidance. She'd tell me she was busy, that she had a lot going on with work. That she needed space. I could practically see her withdrawing, pulling away from me like a tide receding. I was devastated. I didn't understand. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion, of replaying every interaction, every conversation, searching for a clue, a sign, anything that could explain this sudden shift. I'd stay up late, staring at my phone, willing her to text, to call, to give me something. Finally, after weeks of agonizing silence, I got a text. We met at a park, under the shade of a large oak tree. The air was thick with humidity, and the sunlight dappled through the leaves. I remember the way her eyes avoided mine, the tremor in her voice as she said, "I think I like David more." Just like that, my whole world was flipped upside down. The words echoed in my ears, a sentence that sliced through me like a knife. I remember the sting of tears in my eyes, the way my throat closed up, making it impossible to speak. The words seemed so casual, so clinical, like she was reading from a script. Like everything we had meant nothing. I remember the emptiness that followed. That hollow ache in my chest. The days bled into weeks. I'd try to distract myself. Going to the gym, hanging out with friends, trying to convince myself that I was fine. But the memories were always there, the phantom touches, the shared jokes, the way her smile could light up a room. The worst part? It wasn't just the breakup, it was the way David flaunted it. He'd started dropping little hints, like, "Oh, Sarah and I went to this amazing restaurant last night," or, "We had such a fun weekend getaway." He knew what he was doing. He wanted me to feel it. He wanted to rub salt in the wound. I'd be at the bar with friends, and he'd show up, his arm casually draped around Sarah, the two of them radiating a smug, untouchable happiness. The sheer audacity of it was infuriating. And the really sick part was, he tried to make me look bad. He'd whisper to mutual friends that I was too intense or needed to grow up. He painted me as the clingy ex, the guy who couldn't handle rejection. Meanwhile, I was just hurting. I was heartbroken and angry, and the thought of David basking in Sarah's affection while simultaneously trying to make me look like some kind of pathetic loser. It was a recipe for pure, unadulterated rage. I remember one particularly brutal encounter. I was at our favorite record store, browsing the new arrivals, when they walked in. Sarah, radiant and smiling, David, his hand on her back, guiding her through the aisles. I tried to avoid them, to pretend I didn't see them, but it was impossible. David spotted me and gave me a condescending nod, a look of pity mixed with triumph. Sarah looked away, her cheeks flushed. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to tell them both how awful they were, but I couldn't. I just stood there, feeling utterly humiliated. So, I did what any self-respecting, newly scorned man would do, I started plotting my revenge. And it was going to be delicious. I decided I wanted them to be in the public eye, where the truth can be found. And they had to face her family. It wasn't about winning Sarah back. It was about exposing David for the fraud he was. About showing everyone, including Sarah, that I wasn't the problem. I wanted to protect her family from him. My plan started subtly. Sarah and I had always been close to her family. We'd been to barbecues, holiday dinners, you name it. Her parents, her siblings, they'd welcomed me with open arms. I still had access to Sarah's family. They still reached out to me, wanted me at their events. Her younger brother, Mark, and I had bonded over a shared love of video games. Her sister, Emily, and I would talk for hours about books and movies. Her mom, a warm, nurturing woman, always treated me like one of her own. But David? He wasn't privy to their world. He'd never been to their house, never shared a meal with them, never even met her eccentric Uncle Jerry, who always wore mismatched socks and told the most outlandish stories. I knew how much family meant to Sarah. I knew how much she valued their opinions. I figured, if I could get David in front of them, the cracks in his perfect facade would start to show. So, I started by casually mentioning to her mom that I missed her cooking. I'd send a quick text, something like, "Hey Mrs. Thompson, hope you're doing well. Remember that amazing lasagna you made last Thanksgiving? It was the best I've ever had." Nothing too overt, just a gentle reminder that I was still around, that I was still part of the family, in some small way. I had no intention of cutting them off from Sarah, and I knew she would not speak ill of me. A few days later, Sarah's mom texted me. "We're having a family dinner next Saturday," she wrote. "You're more than welcome to join us." My heart leaped. This was my opportunity. This was the opening I needed. I could almost taste the sweet, sweet revenge. I knew I couldn't miss the chance. I would be there. The invitation, in its casual simplicity, was a green light, a beacon of hope. The first step of my plan was simple: I had to make sure they both got invited. I knew that if I told Sarah, she wouldn't go. That would ruin everything. The dinner was to be at their family home. I knew Sarah wouldn't want to face the family so soon after the breakup. I could just see Sarah running from the house. So, I casually asked her best friend, Jessica, to tell Sarah that I was invited to the family dinner. I knew Jessica would tell her. I was sure that hearing I was going would surely encourage her to be there. The trap was set, the bait was laid. And boy, did they take the bait. The truth would be exposed. The anticipation was almost unbearable. The days leading up to the dinner were a blur of restless energy. I started working out, something I hadn't done in a while. Anything to take my mind off things. The thought of the dinner, the confrontation, the potential for David's humiliation, fueled my every action. I knew I had to be on top of my game, had to be prepared for anything. I spent hours mentally rehearsing the conversations, crafting witty comebacks, anticipating David's every move. Saturday arrived, and I spent the entire day pacing. I'd showered, shaved, and picked out the perfect outfit, something that said, "I'm doing just fine," actually, but also subtly hinted at the fact that I was once a part of their family. I chose a button-down shirt in a soft, muted color, paired with a comfortable pair of chinos and my favorite pair of leather boots. It was a look that was both understated and put together, something that would suggest to everyone that I had moved on and found my own inner peace. I didn't want to appear to be putting forth too much effort, and I especially didn't want to send the wrong message to Sarah. I arrived at Sarah's parents' house, and took a deep breath. My stomach churned, a mix of excitement and anxiety. I felt like I was preparing for battle. But I knew I had to stay calm, play it cool. I knocked on the door, and was greeted by the familiar warmth of her mom. "Oh, honey, come in, come in." She gave me a hug, the scent of cinnamon and baked apples filling the air. It was a smell that instantly transported me back to countless holiday dinners, to the comforting security of Sarah's family. Her hug was tight, a little longer than usual. It felt like a silent acknowledgement, a shared understanding. The house was bustling. Laughter, the clinking of silverware, the aroma of a roast cooking in the oven. It was exactly as I remembered. The same old wooden table, the same mismatched chairs, the same collection of family photos adorning the walls. It all brought back a rush of memories. Images of Sarah, radiant and smiling, filling my mind. And then, I saw her. Sarah. Anne. David. They were standing awkwardly by the fireplace, looking incredibly out of place. Sarah's face went pale when she saw me. Her eyes widened, and I could see a flicker of surprise, followed by a quick mask of composure. David, on the other hand, plastered on a fake smile, the kind that screamed, "I'm trying way too hard." His smile was too wide, his eyes a little too bright. He extended his hand, and I shook it, the grip weak and insincere. The early part of the dinner was pure tension. There were stilted conversations, forced pleasantries, and a palpable awkwardness hanging over the table. Sarah barely spoke, her eyes darting from one person to the next. David, bless his heart, tried to be charming, regaling the family with stories of their fancy dates and expensive vacations. He clearly didn't understand the subtle cues, the shared inside jokes, the unspoken language of a family. He was like a fish out of water, floundering in the deep end. He was trying to make a connection, trying to fit in, but his efforts only served to highlight his outsider status. I, on the other hand, was on home turf. I had the upper hand. I knew the family dynamics, the family history. I knew the subtle nuances of each person's personality. I had spent years getting to know these people, had shared countless meals, laughter, and tears with them. I had an advantage that David simply didn't possess. After a while, I steered the conversation toward the one topic I knew would trigger David. It was the one place I knew I could truly expose him. I knew that David had been a disappointment to her family, and I wanted to show them what I already knew. So, David, I said, feigning innocent curiosity, Sarah tells me you're a big fan of fine dining. He puffed up his chest, his eyes gleaming with self-importance. Absolutely. I love trying new restaurants and experiences. That's great. I replied, a subtle smile playing on my lips. Because Sarah's mom makes a killer pot roast, doesn't she? It's something you can't just go out and buy. I could practically feel the tension in the air. A collective intake of breath filled the room. David stammered, trying to recover. He started talking about how much he loved Sarah's apartment and how it had such great lighting. Her mom, God bless her, then chimed in. Oh, David, do you like to cook too? David, caught off guard, began to sweat. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Well, you know, I'm more of a take-out kind of guy. I saw the glimmer of recognition in Sarah's father's eyes. He knew. Everyone knew. They knew that David was not the kind of man who cooked, that he didn't appreciate the simple pleasures of a home-cooked meal. They knew that he was superficial, that he was more interested in appearances than substance. I knew that at this point, I'd won. The first blow had been landed, and David had stumbled. The rest of the dinner was a symphony of small humiliations. I subtly mentioned things I knew about Sarah, inside jokes, favorite memories. I recounted stories from our past, things only Sarah and I would know, leaving David utterly bewildered. The man was a fraud, a pretender, and the family was finally realizing it. I remembered our first trip together to the beach, the way the salt water felt on our skin. I brought up the time we got lost in the woods and had to navigate our way back with the help of the stars. I brought up the terrible pun that we shared every time we ate a sandwich, only Sarah knew that it was a funny joke. I was building the contrast between David and myself. I saw the disgust in Sarah's sister's eyes, and the pity in her brother's. They were all looking at him like he was some kind of cheap imitation. Each memory, each shared detail, was a brushstroke painting the picture of David as an outsider. His charm, his confidence, began to crumb. Lo! He seemed to shrink in his seat, his face reddening with embarrassment. He struggled to keep up, to insert himself into the conversation. He was lost, adrift in a sea of shared history, a history he wasn't a part of. Then came the grand finale. Dessert was served, a beautiful apple pie, Sarah's favorite. The house smelled of cinnamon and sugar, and I remembered helping Sarah pick out the perfect apples for her mom's pie. I took a bite, savored the flavor, and then turned to Sarah. You know, Sarah, I said, my voice soft, remember that time we went apple picking? We spent the entire day, and it was the best day of my life. I made sure to look directly into David's eyes when I said that. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated satisfaction. He was completely defeated. He looked like a deflated balloon, all of his charm and charisma evaporated. His facade had finally crumbled. He was exposed for who he was, a man who was trying to be someone he wasn't. Sarah, for her part, looked utterly mortified, a mixture of shame and regret washing over her face. Her parents said very little, but the disappointment in their eyes was crystal clear. They exchanged a look, a silent conversation filled with unspoken words. The meal ended, the tension barely breaking as we moved into the clearing of the table. As everyone was clearing the table, David started to make a scene. He looked like he wanted to bolt. His face was red. The corners of his mouth were turned down in what I interpreted as a grimace of despair. His shoulders were slumped, his posture betraying a sense of defeat. Sarah looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. She couldn't meet my eyes. I walked over to Sarah, my voice even, calm, yet pointed. "I think you made a mistake. But hey, at least you know the truth now, right?" I had no desire for a confrontation. My goal had been achieved. I left them with those final words. It was a statement, not a question. I left, knowing that the damage had been done. I'd planted the seed of doubt, and now it was up to the family to decide what would grow from it. The payoff? Well, it wasn't immediate. The next few days were filled with whispers. I got messages from Sarah's siblings. "Thanks for the laugh," one said. "Good riddance," said another. Their parents didn't say much, but I knew they were disappointed. I could sense a shift in their interactions, a subtle distancing from David. Sarah tried to text me a few times, but I ignored her. I had said what I needed to say. I had nothing more to add. There was nothing more to say. A week later, I got a call from her mom. It was a simple check-in. A request for reassurance. Her voice held a lot of relief. It was nice. She told me that Sarah and David had broken up. Turns out, the cracks in their relationship were a lot bigger than I thought. David, apparently, was not only a bad cook and a lover of takeout, but a bit of a phony. He wasn't who he claimed to be. Sarah, after seeing him in a different light, didn't want anything to do with him anymore. The best part of the revenge wasn't about the breakup, though. It was about the truth. I didn't want Sarah back. I just wanted her to see the kind of person she had gotten involved with. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't the villain he made me out to be. And I wanted to know that the people I loved and cared for in her life were okay. It was about showing David that he could not come into the world of this family and pretend to be something he was not. I walked away with my head held high. I knew I had done the right thing. I had not gone to get her back. I had been truthful to her. I saw the look of relief on Sarah's mom's face when I left her house. She got her daughter back, without the fake facade. And most importantly, I knew the truth had finally come out. David, I learned, was also not a good person. The truth? I had nothing to regret. It didn't hurt nearly as much anymore. I had gotten over Sarah. I had found my own happiness. I learned I deserved better. And I was able to maintain a friendship with her family. They became mine again. In the end, they, along with myself, got to see the true colors of David. So, what's the moral of the story? Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is the truth. Sometimes, all it takes is a little bit of planning and a whole lot of family. I may not have gotten her back, but I gained something far more valuable, closure, vindication, and the satisfaction of knowing that I'd exposed a liar. I wasn't the bad guy, David was. And at that dinner, everyone knew it. It was a perfect ending, a fitting conclusion to a painful chapter in my life. And I wouldn't have traded that dinner for anything. So, there you have it. That's the story of how I turned a heartbreak into a triumph. It was a long time ago, and I've moved on since then. But I still get a little smile on my face when I think back to that night, that family dinner. It's a reminder that the truth comes out eventually, and sometimes, the best revenge is just being yourself, being honest, and letting the world see the real you. What do you guys think? Have you ever had a situation where you needed to get revenge? Tell me about it in the comments below. I love reading your stories, and I'm always looking for inspiration for future videos. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this story. It really helps the channel. And if you've been in a similar situation, or want to share your own Reddit revenge story, let me know down in the comments. I'm always looking for new content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.